Okay, so this is part 4 of the story on the Kinahans, and let's get into the Kinahan-Hutch clan war, which is one of the things at the heart of the reason law enforcement has made Daniel Kinahan and his family such a priority. Now, first, it's important to know that almost all the casualties are on the Hutch side. It's kind of more of a war of the Kinahans on the Hutches, and several of the monks' closest relatives and friends have bit the bullet. So my story starts at a marriage. Daniel Kinahan's, to be exact, back in 2017 in Dubai, the same place he's hiding out right now with the $5 million bounty on his head, and people banned from doing business with him. Now, his criminal partners from South America and all over Europe were guests at the wedding, which was a blunder because a lot of law enforcement was watching. One of the guests was Camorra powerhouse Raffaelle Imperiale, the man responsible for supplying Naples' street-level drug markets, and a guy who, just like the Kinahans, was in Dubai, as it's a place that up till now hasn't been a place that extradites much or asks where your money comes from, especially when you're spending $500K a month. Raffaelle was holed up there in Dubai avoiding an Italian arrest warrant, but eventually the Italian authorities pressured Dubai into giving him up about a year ago, and that's got to make Kinahan concerned. He knows his doom is going to fall because just like Tyson Fury can't enter the U.S., there's a lot of people having a problem because if you do business with the Kinahans, the U.S. government can take your money, maybe try to arrest you, put the squeeze on you, and at the end of the day, Dubai might like criminals' money, but no money is as long as the U.S. government's, and if they give Dubai a hard enough time, they're going to turn him in. So some say he's planning a desert Jeep ride across the sands to some other Emirati or Yemen or something, or he's going to try to go to South America and hide out. Now, his buddy, Raffaelle from the Camorra, pretty interesting deal he was able to make with the Italian government, and it shows you what happens at high levels. Just like the Mexican narcos, if they can turn over a lot of money, they don't get as much time. Raffaelle had 2 Van Gogh paintings valued at a total of $100 million, and he turned those over, and that turned his 20 years into 8 years. And interestingly, those same 2 paintings were used as his collateral with South American drug suppliers. So it's a lot easier to move around 2 paintings that's worth $100 million than $100 million in cash. Now, in fact, Daniel Kinahan is the only crime lord who attended his wedding that's still free. So again, his time in Dubai is likely to come to an unexpected and abrupt end any day now. And in my first 3 Kinahan stories, we gave an overview of who they are, talked about the high-profile crimes and their influence in boxing that's made them hotter than fish grease, as they say. Now, the feud between the Kinahans and the Hutch clan, led by Gerry the Monk Hutch, I talked about an estimated 24 murders, a couple of them very high profile, and the one down in Marbella especially, and then the one at the Regency in Dublin made the Kinahans a very, very high priority for law enforcement. Now, when the Kinahans killed the monk's nephew, Gerry, in Spain, Gerry the monk should probably have just accepted it, but instead he made the bad mistake, according to the police, who have him in jail awaiting trial for murder. He made the bad mistake of sending gunmen into the Regency Hotel to try to get Daniel Kinahan, but he had already left, and it was during a boxing weigh-in for Kinahan's boxing promotion, and a guy named Byrne, supposedly a Kinahan enforcer, was shot dead. So far, 3 of Gerry Hutch's nephews, a brother and 2 lifelong friends, have been executed supposedly by Kinahan hitman, and Hutch was forced to flee the country and go into hiding before he got taken into custody. And of course, the spark that ultimately lit the fuse was the murder of Hutch's nephew Gerry in Spain in September of 2015, which was followed 3 months later by a failed hit on the Monk himself. In the earlier episodes, I wasn't able to really describe for sure why Gerry Hutch, the Monk's nephew, was killed, but I think some more research has made it a little clearer. Now, the Kinahans' criminal activities have always mostly been in drugs with the sideline and weapons, but the Hutches, well, Gerry the Monk, was known for high-end robberies, like robberies that get millions of dollars, like the kinds you might see in a Guy Ritchie movie. He kind of looks like a Guy Ritchie character. Dublin, 2009, the tiger kidnapping of a bank executive. Now, tiger kidnapping is an Irish specialty. Kidnap someone to make them do something else. So in this case, Gerry Hutch led a team that grabbed a banker, his girlfriend, and her family, and they turned over 8 million in euros, like they stole from the bank, or I don't know if the bank gave it to them or they just got it out of the safe, to secure their freedom. And so that was a big lick that the Monk's nephew hit. And supposedly he took 2.5 million of that and gave it to the Kinahans to launder or put into the drug business. But then time was passing and Gerry wasn't getting his money. So he started to accuse the Kinahans of ripping him off. So in the last stories I talked about them saying that the Hutch who got killed was an informant, but that doesn't seem that credible. But what does seem credible involves a Dutch gangster with a unique name. Mink, K-O-K, is his name. Running coke and guns has been his game. Netherlands native Mink, a convicted gun runner and cocaine trafficker, had worked with Christy Kinahan, the father, ever since they met in Holland in the early 90s. Back in 2011, Mink was arrested in Lebanon with about 100 pounds of yayo, which for Lebanon, which is a small country that produces heroin, that was the biggest load ever at the time. And one of Coke's partners had an Irish passport that was in the name of a drug addict from Dublin, which supposedly the Kinahans provided. And Mink and his guys got 8 years. And back in Marbella, Spain, Daniel Kinahan took advantage of his absence. Gerry Hutch was claiming that they knocked off Mink's bagman in Marbella and took over the South American supply of yayo. Not a friendly thing to do. And so Gerry Hutch, the guy who got chased running around a Marbella swimming pool in the fancy estate, had been running his mouth about the Kinahans, and he even said they ripped off some other Dutch gangsters. So Gerry the Monk is supposedly in retirement at this time. This is like 2015. He's got 40 million in euros supposedly stashed, and his nephew is owed a couple million from the Kinahans. I would imagine Gerry secretly had something to do with the tiger kidnapping. But either way, his nephew's running his mouth about the Kinahans stealing Mink's business and stealing his money. So Gerry, probably figuring his nephew's in danger, starts organizing sit-downs, and he pays the $200,000, and it appears to have somebody shot in the leg. That's kind of confusing. And Kinahan agreed and took the $200,000, but then he sent his hitter to hunt Gerry the Monk's nephew down, chase him around that swimming pool in Marbella. So the Kinahans may have done a quadruple cross or whatever. They got Mink, they got down on the Monk and his nephew, and then they killed Gerry the Monk's nephew. But who is this guy, the Monk? Leader of the losing side in a war with the most famous Irish gangsters, though he's managed to survive himself. He's currently looking at life in prison for organizing the Regency Dublin hotel hit. So he ran in a teenage gang, and then he started masterminding a series of bank robberies. He was born in 1963 in Dublin. He ran with the Bugsy Malones. They started out snatching cash from behind counters, and then he graduated into armored car stuff. No evidence he was ever in the dope game. He hasn't been convicted of a crime since '83. but Irish federal police believe to this day he's the man behind a $1.7 million or 1.7 million pound theft from a transit van in Dublin in '87. They are also certain he masterminded the Brink's Allied Depot robbery in North Dublin in '95. They had netted him 3 million pounds. I mean, that's like $5 million in '95 money. That's like 10 million in today's money alone. And investigators believe in total the monk amassed personally 40 million euros from robbing activities. And law enforcement thought he had retired quietly to Spain to live a rich man's life while not having to break the law. And he was nicknamed by the streets as the monk because he didn't drink or smoke. But it was his loyalty to his own family that led to his return, but probably caused his own family, a bunch of family members and friends, to get killed. I think there might be a conviction in one or two with people loosely tied to the Kinahans, but it was all events put in motion by the Kinahans behind the scenes. And the Kinahans, you know, it's when you see people, you know, taking pictures with celebrities, and that's why Daniel Kinahan and other big gangsters like to, you know, I'm sure they have fun being out and about and hobnobbing with the rich and famous, but they also don't want the public to really know what it takes to get a $1 billion drug empire. I mean, supposedly they backstabbed their guy, Mink. They knocked off his bag man, took his connects, and when someone else in their circle, Gerry Hutch, complained about it and then realized they were going to do the same thing to him, he got bumped off. And Gerry the Monk, a real criminal mastermind, might have almost decapitated the head of the Kinahans at the Regency Hotel, but almost doesn't get you the victory. But in this case, it did get Gerry the Monk's brother, a couple nephews, and a couple close friends who really had nothing to do with what was going on, kaput. So right now, Gerry the Monk is sitting in jail awaiting trial for the murder, masterminding the murder at the Regency Hotel in Dublin. It looks like a movie still shot, I guess. This Guy Ritchie didn't make all that crazy British gangster stuff up out of his head. Al Prophet, Ireland dope.